Hello, I welcome you to my React tutorial. Now, this is the first ever React video that I'll be doing. If you have been following up with my channel, you would know that most of my videos are basically on Django and basic HTML and CSS with JavaScript and Bootstrap. Now, for this particular video, I'm going to be making our first React tutorial episode. This is going to be a series, and we are going to be taking it little by little until we are done with all the requirements to become a React developer. Now let's get started. Now, what is React? If you go to W3 School and hover to the React home, React is a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. So we use React to build user interfaces. And React is a JavaScript library. I know some people think that React is a JavaScript framework, but actually React is a library. React helps us to build single page applications as well as use reusable components to make sure that we don't repeat ourselves throughout our code. So we can just create components and render the component whenever we need. Now to get started with creating React, sorry, I am going to take you to Vite. Now, when you go to vite.dev, Vite is the package, the React package that we are going to be using. Vite bundles our React application and helps us to, build our React application faster. You don't need to know anything to become a React developer. The only requirement for this video for you to be able to understand the things that we'll be doing in this video is a basic understanding of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, once you have basic understanding of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you will be able to follow along with this tutorial. If you haven't gone through HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, go straight to my channel. You are going to see my HTML and CSS training, including the JavaScript, the basic JavaScript training, which is the recent video that I've done up here. And visit it, study it, follow along with it, and then you can visit this particular course after you are done with that. Now, this video is done on 2025, so it's a very recent video. So let's get started. I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to call this folder My React. I am going to drag it to the Visual Studio Code and drop it there. Now my folder is opened in the Visual Studio Code. So that's the IDE that I'll be using. Now, before we get along with this, we need a terminal. We need the Node. We need Node. So let's go to our browser and look for Node. Now, to get Node, we go to nodejs.org. And once you get to nodejs.org, you can simply click on download Node.js, RTS, version. Now, LTS version is long time support version. So it's going to be supported for a very long time. So you don't have to download anything that is going to give you dependency issues when there is a major update. Okay. So but when you get the long-term support version of it, it's going to have like up to 5 years support for that particular version. So you don't need to worry in terms on the node compatibility of your applications. So once you download Node.js, go ahead and install Node.js. Now, for those of you that wants to know if Node.js is fully installed on your application, on your laptop or desktop, you can simply go to your terminal. I'm using Windows, so I'm going to be using the command prompt. So I'm going to just type cmd and I'm going to press enter. That is going to open the command prompt. So this is my command prompt. I'm going to type node node-v and press enter. Now you can see I have node version 22.14.0. So this is the version of node that I have. One more thing, let's see if we have npm. So by default, once you install node, it's going to come with the npm. So, but just to be sure, npm-v as well. So -v is when you are on Windows. If you are on Mac and Linux, you use node space dash dash version. And that's going to give you the version of node that you have, as well as npm. So this is the npm version that I have. So I don't have problem. I'm going to close this because I'm going to be using the terminal in my IDE. Let's get back to our IDE and Ctrl-J to open our terminal. And here, I'm going to select the terminal that I'll be using. In my case, I'll be using command prompt. So I'm going to close up the PowerShell. Let's bring this up. All right, then let's go to Vite. I'm going to close this. And getting to Vite, we have scaffolding your first Vite project. So this is the command to initialize your project or to start a Vite project. npm create Vite at latest. I'm going to just click here to copy it. Get back to our IDE and paste it on my terminal and press enter. It's going to take some time to, depending on the speed of your internet, it's going to take some time to scaffold your application. So let's wait for it. Now there is a question here. It says need to install the following packages, and the first question is said create Vite at 6.4.1. Okay, proceed with Y. So you press Y and press enter. The next thing, it asks you the project name. Here you can give your project a name. Let's call it my Vite. Or you can simply press enter if you want it to be Vite project. Then it will ask you some bunch of other questions. Select a framework. So we can use the arrow key on your keyboard to select React. Press enter, and it's going to ask you to select a variant. We're going to select JavaScript. Press enter. Now Vite is scaffolding your application, and if you look here, you are going to see Vite project, because this is the name that we gave to this application. If you click on it, you see some bunch of other files within it. Now we need to cd into our application, which is Vite-project, and we can now do npm install so that we can install the node modules. Press enter, and this is also going to take some time, so we'll wait for it. All right, so everything is installed now, and you can see here it says added 152 packages and audited 153 packages in 18 minutes. So it took a very long time to fully download these things. And 13 packages are looking for funding. These ones we are not interested in. So one more command, which is going to be the npm run dev. And how do I know that that's the command to use? If we go to Vite configuration, sorry, not actually Vite configuration, but package.json file, we should go to the scripts, and on the development mode we have Vite, and on the build we have Vite build, and then we have the ESL, ES linked, and then preview is Vite preview. And all these are the configurations for this our Vite package. So I can actually set up the command on the script if I want that. Let's go to the Vite documentation on that. So after I have done the npm create Vite at latest, I will come down here, and then I did npm install, and the next thing is npm run dev. Let's try it. So let's try it. npm run dev, and make sure you are in the directory that contains your project, because if you did not do cd into the project directory, it's going to throw up an error. So this is going to spring up a server for us, and we'll click on that server, and it takes us to our project. Now look up here, you will see that we have Vite running, and this is the localhost directory, or let's call it link to our website. We can just do control with left click and control to take us to that particular website. And this is going to open our scaffolded application. Now this is our React app, This is our React app. Now in the next module of this tutorial, we shall be looking into how to adjust the contents of our React app. Our server is still running, so let's understand the project structure. Now this is the Vite configuration. It controls how Vite interacts with our React. The readme.md, which contains some information about Vite project. The package.json file, which serves as the configuration for our project generally, and the package.log.json, which is also doing almost the same thing. Then our index.html, which returns everything that we are doing. So this is the HTML, and the React app is able to interact with this HTML through this ID of root. So our React app is able to communicate to this by getting the root ID. So on the root ID, we can actually display all other contents to the root ID. So this is how our React app is able to communicate. And this is the script that takes us to our main.js, which is found inside the src folder. Let's see the src folder, and this is our main.js file. This is our React main entrance. This is just like the main entrance to our application. Everything is rendered inside of this main.js. For example, the app is being rendered into our main.js. And if you come to the top here, you're going to see some import statements. But the one I am most interested in is the import app from app.js. Now this is the current directory and app.js. So this is the current directory, and we have app.js. Now this is the full app.js, and this app.js is being rendered inside the main.js, which is also rendered in our HTML here. Now let's understand it properly. The main.js is where you render all the components of our app. Okay, so on the app.js, let's change some certain things, and so that we can see what is happening. So let's say welcome to our React app. And if we go to this, you see welcome to our React app. And this is coming from the app.js, as you can see. And this app.js has been imported into the main.js, which empties itself into the index.html, which has an ID of root. So this is where the entry point of our application, whereas it renders the main.js, and each of the components are going to also be rendered into the main.js from here. Or we can also render them into the app.js and return the app.js into the main.js. This may look it may look so theoretical, but as we begin to dive into the coding part of it, you begin to understand that React is very simple if you understand JavaScript actually. I'll see you in the next module. Welcome back. Now, let us go to the app.js. I'm going to close the main.js and I'm going to delete everything that I have here except the React fragment. I am also going to delete the logo, the use state, and all that. We'll still come to that later on. Let's also delete this now this is just to help us understand how React functions or how React works. All right, so React utilizes functions and classes, but most especially functions, to return some components into our HTML or into our browser. Now this is called React fragment, and this is because React cannot take two HTML elements. Take for example the paragraph, let's say hello world, and we also have maybe another paragraph again and say hello world 2. Now you can see that we are having errors everywhere, and this is because the React JSX cannot render these HTMLs individually. It needed to be padded into either a React fragment like this, a React fragment like this, and these things are going to go into the fragment. And now everything should work perfectly. Let's see. And you can see hello world and hello world 2. Let's have this by the side and also have this by the side. I'm going to close this one. All right. We can also use div, the HTML div for this. And this is going to work perfectly as well. So, all right. Now, let's see and understand this. Now, to be able to use our CSS, we really need to import it. So, if we didn't import the CSS, you see what's happening. The CSS is no longer loading. But if you have this CSS back, you see, so for us to be able to use the app.css, which is in the same directory with our project, we actually need to import it. We'll still come to that later on, but we have a function. All right, let me just remove everything and let's have a function, and let's call it app. And this function is going to return something. So let's return some HTML. Let's return some HTML div. Let's return some bunch of HTML. But this is not HTML actually. to tell you it's not HTML actually. So let's have div, and within it let's have a paragraph and say hello world again. Now this is not going to be rendered until we import this, we export this function. To be able to use this particular function that we created here, we should have a way of exporting this function so that we can import it into the other files that we have here, which is main.js. So whichever function that we create, we must also have to export it. And there are two ways we can export it. We can either export the app directly, or we can either export each of these functions. For example, we can have export function like this. So we can export this function this way, but the limitations here is that you are only exporting one function. So provided you have up to 3-4 other functions within here, you are going to export them individually. So in this case, we have another alternative, which is to export default app, and like this we can export all the functions that exist within this app component. So this is the way we do it on React. Actually, this is the way we do it on React. And you can see we have hello world again. Now, the reason why we have this hello world again is because we are rendering the app here. Okay, we are rendering the app here. Let's create another file. Let's call it nav.jsx. Now, JSX represents JavaScript XML. So those HTML related components that we have been writing, like paragraph, div, and all that, are not actually HTML, but they are XML. And they are JavaScript XML that resembles HTML. So they are not HTML, but JavaScript. Okay. So this is how we do it. So the component should start, the name of the component should start with capital letter. It doesn't limit you though, but this is just the convention. So here we do it, we start with function. I don't want to start using the arrow function at this moment. Let's just get used to it before we move to the arrow function. Okay, so we have function. Let's call it nav. And this function is going to return something. And what is it going to return? Some bunch of XML. Okay, so let's use, this time around, let's use the React fragment. And let's do some bunch of HTML. So I'm going to use the semantic HTML nav. Let's have some UL and LI inside of it, and have some of the navs like this. Let's just copy and paste. Let's call this about and services. Now, this function cannot be used anywhere except we export the function. So let's export this function. And to export it, we use export default, nav. Okay, so we are now exporting this function that exists within this component. Now let's come to the main.js, and we are going to first of all import that component. So we're going to use import, and the component is nav from, and we're going to import it from ./nav.jsx, and we need to render it into the main component, and this is going to be like this, nav. And like this, you can see that the component is being rendered inside our website. So this is how we create components. But you can make this thing arranged, because here, the more we create components here, it can get messy. So within this place, which is the SRC, we can create a folder and call it components. Let's move our nav.jsx into the component. And once we move it, our main.js should also refer to it. That's why we updated it. Okay, let's do the same thing on the app.jsx. Let's move it into the components. And it will ask us to update app.jsx. And once we update it, this is no longer going to refer to ./app.jsx. It is going to refer to ./components/app.jsx. Let's see. And you can see what we have there. And it reloads our page. So all the components will be found inside of the components, so that we can actually arrange it very well. We can arrange it into different sections in the components. So this is just a way of rendering the components in our React. This is all for our today's lesson. In our next tutorial, we are going to be looking into the more details about React and how React functions. We're also going to be looking into the hooks, like the use states, the use effect, and other hooks. So stay tuned and make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow my Facebook page and other social media accounts, so that anytime I make a post, you get notified instantly. I will see you in our next class. Take care.